Hi, my name is Stephanie Joy Phillips. I'm the founder of World Childless Week, and tonight we are joined by Kevin Davidson, who's going to talk about Beware the Fatherhood Bonus. So welcome, Kevin. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I'm going to literally disappear from the screens so you can take over the chat and come back at the end just to say goodnight and thank you. So until then,
okay.
See you later.
Thank you very much. Right, what I'm going to do straight away is just share my screen with my webinar. That's not the right screen. Bear with me. This is what live does. Apologies for that. I thought I had it in front of me. Okay. Right, sorry for this, just a bit of a technical issue here trying to get my webinar up, so just bear with me. It will be up in a minute. Okay, and share that. Here we go. Okay, right, bit of a technical issue there. Welcome to tonight's webinar, which is on the Fatherhood Bonus. It's Beware the Fatherhood Bonus. Now, this is something that I came across. There's been some research on this, and it actually discriminates non-fathers and rewards fathers, and it's unwarranted and doesn't actually have any evidence as to why. So it's really about fighting against prejudice, because it does impact you as a childless man, not just financially, but there's also moral and psychological factors that can impact you. So what I'm going to talk about today is that there will be a little intro about me, and then I'm going to break this into 4 parts. Sorry about the typo there for part 3. Father and non-father popular beliefs. Now, this is going to be really looking at the structure. This is what is actually creating the situation of the fatherhood bonus, these beliefs. So I'll actually just show what these are and how these influence employers. Then we'll look at the employment situation. There's actually a report both in the UK and the US that I'm going to relate to, which has shown benefits for fathers from employers, and these are full-time working fathers, that are going to impact non-fathers. Then part 3 leads on to what is the impact for you as a non-father when you have an employment situation that is prejudice and discriminatory to you. And then the last part really is about what can be done. What can you do to fight this situation in employment, which is impacting you financially, morally, and psychologically? And then we'll go through a summary and conclusion at the end. And what I'll do from time to time is that I'll go back to the chat box and the Q&A, and I'll have a look if there's any questions to answer, which will just take a pause, because I'm sure you don't want to have PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint, and I certainly want to administer that to you. So a bit about me. I'm a child of the 60s, just 1969, so I'm 52. My parents, they came to the UK in 1967 from East Africa. I've got one brother, and in my family, my father is one child, he's an only child, and my mother's from a large family of 10. So there's quite a legacy in our family. And on my father's side, there's a legacy of men. There's been 4 generations of men. So this has had a real impact on me, being childless. I'm a coach. I coach men to be impactful, so they can feel more complete, for better relationships, health, and prosperity. Now, I am a childless man, and it's something that I do say to people, and it's something that I don't hesitate to say anymore, and it's something that I'm not ashamed to say. I was previously married, and I tried for years to have kids. We had 2 failed IVFs. We went through different acupunctures, herbal treatments, Reiki, you name it, but it just didn't happen. And unfortunately, because of the impact of that, it resulted in divorce. Where I am now is that I'm now living with my long-term partner, Abby. She's not wanting of children, so that's something that I've come to terms with, that we're not going to have children. Very difficult decision. And we have a little mini dash, Rudy, and I'd say that we're very happy at the moment. But this has been a very good thing to do, because it's made me reflect on what's happened in the past and be able to, build awareness, not just for non-parents and non-fathers, but for parents and fathers, that, we do exist and we do matter. And just to let you know is that I play tennis at a club and I drum. So let's talk about fathers and the popular beliefs that trigger and drive employers. You can see a man over here, very proud, being a father. And what the popular belief is, that fathers are mature. Employers see fatherhood as a sense of seniority. And from that, they see them as being more responsible. So they tend then, because of those 2 beliefs, to be given priority for promotions and senior roles, because they feel that they are more authoritative. They also believe that with having a family, they're more settled. And from that, they're less likely to leave. So they're more reliable in terms of needing to work, because they're supporting their family, and they've got a loyalty that they don't want to leave because of their dependents. I know, utter garbage, but this is what employers believe. And from that, they see them as role models. They see them as role models in employment, and role models to young people. And from that, they see them as being complete, like they're happy in their lives and everything is settled, and makes them a very reliable and committed employee rather. Non-fathers, according to employers, are free because they don't have kids. So they see them as having more time on their hands. They see them as being wealthier, having more disposable income, because they don't have dependents, or not supporting their family. Funny enough, they see them as being less stressed because they don't have kids to deal with, and the pressures that brings as far as childcare and school, etc., which goes into the wealthier side. But also they see them as being private. That's because there's a suspicion as to why they're not fathers. There's something not right there, or something has occurred for them not to follow the code of what they see as a committed employee rather. And from that, they also have suspicions of being selfish, that they're not people that share, and not people that want to give. There's also thoughts of them being players, that they're not settled down, they're not mature, they're happy to play the field, and that leaves them to being unsettled. So again, employers see them as not being loyal, reliable, and not being a good role model. Again, totally unwarranted, total garbage, but this is what drives employers to create the employment situation where the fatherhood bonus is born. And it's important to look at these because these are the things that need to be questioned. These are the things that we need to fight against because they are totally unwarranted and unproven. So let me just see if there's any questions and answers. There's none. I'll just quickly have a look at the chat. Okay. Yep. No worries. Okay. Let's carry on. So for the second part, in the UK, there was a report by the TEC and it covered 17,000 full-time working men age 42. And what the findings found is that full-time working non-fathers earned 21% less than full-time fathers. Now, the study tried to look at reasons for this. And the only thing they found was that fathers tended to work half an hour extra per week. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but I can quickly say that half an hour extra doesn't equate to 21% extra in pay. So there is something wrong with the situation as to why the half hour calculates to fathers earning more than non-fathers. And the report has tried to look into this, but it hasn't been able to come up with anything that's proven or with evidence. More worryingly is that they found that father CVs were being scored higher than identical non-father CVs, even though that they had the same education, same experience. Again, they looked at the factors that we talked about before as positive discrimination, they call it, to say that fathers, because they had dependents, would be more settled, they'd be more mature, they would be more complete, and they would be more responsible. And that's what scored them higher. Again, total garbage and totally unwarranted, and something that is very surprising. Now, it made me think a little bit because I look back on my career in corporate and I think about some of the times that I question why I wasn't actually promoted and other people were, particularly senior positions. And looking at this now, it does seem to point to the fact that there has been some positive discrimination towards me. I don't see it as positive discrimination because I'm a non-father, but it's something that for you to look out for, because this is something that has been found in the UK by the TUC. And just to let you know is that this was a report which followed on from an earlier report, which was taken from a cohort study in 1958. And they found that full-time working fathers earned 12% more. So you can see that in that time, the situation hasn't improved. If anything, it's got worse. So it nearly doubled since that other study. So a fifth is quite a lot of difference when it comes to pay. And the report then said that basically the conclusion was that fathers were more committed. Again, there was no evidence of that. There was no evidence that fathers worked any harder than non-fathers. It was just that they, for some reason, worked an extra half an hour extra, which, as I said, doesn't equate to the 21%. Quite worrying. In the US, there was an article in the New York Times which talked about the fatherhood bonus. Now, the pay difference was less than the UK. It's 16% rather than 21%. But again, that's still a fair chunk of money because the people that benefited the most were people in higher positions. So they had bumper pay packets than people in lower positions. So the impact was higher. Again, it was rewarded for unproven increased work effort. The article wasn't able to define what that actually meant. Increased work effort. It could be anything. So again, it's unwarranted. And like what I said, how I felt is that I feel for my corporate career that promotional prospects and the acquisition of more money was not as was progressive for me as some of my colleagues who were fathers. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but looking at these factors from these two reports, there's some influence from that. And again, just like in the UK, fathers were seen as being more stable and committed to work. Again, these are based on the beliefs that we've gone through that just don't weigh up, and they're totally unwarranted. So you can see this is the sort of situation that you face in employment. And this is in 2 countries. We just use it as an example. There's also a study I came across about COVID. It's a Facebook case study. And what they found is that parents had more time off during the COVID when they were working from home. They said that was because they needed to have round-the-clock childcare because they had dependents. The trouble was, though, that the slack of the work had to be picked up by non-parents. But the bonuses were not realigned. The arguments that came is that non-parents were seen as lacking in patience, they showed no empathy, and there was a sense of entitlement. The problem with this is that the report said, and as a non-parent myself, is that parenthood at the end of the day is voluntary. It's a choice that somebody's made. They wanted children, therefore the implications that come along with that have to be accepted as well. Why should people that don't have children be impacted to work more for the same pay when they themselves have that situation through an involuntary in most cases? So this particular study showed in Facebook this happening. I'm sure that it's happened through the COVID epidemic in other parts of the world and other companies, but maybe it hasn't been reported. And maybe it's something that you yourselves have experienced. And if you have, it'd be quite good to put in the chat. Now, the last one is to look at just some more information from the New York Times. Now, I've experienced this. Non-fathers are expected to work on weekends, again, because it's seen that they are freer and have more time. Well, it doesn't mean to say just because we don't have kids that we don't value our leisure time and we want to actually use our weekends for recuperation. But the work expectations sometimes are seen to say that, well, it's something that you need to do. Another thing is old traditional family values go into the corporate environment. For men, it comes from the authoritarian sort of face of the father. So fathers are seen to be more authoritarian and mature, where non-fathers are not seen so. This is something I've experienced when I was actually going into more senior roles, that when I went into boardrooms, I got sometimes a feeling of, I'd say, mild patronizing that I wasn't a father. And some people nearly went as short as patting me on the head as if I was their son in some of the exchanges I had. I stood my ground, but you can feel it. And then men in this study we found is that they're encouraged to display pictures of their family and baby photos on their desks, because again, that increases their promotional prospects and their attractiveness in the employment situation. And people have even put in PTA, Parent-Teacher Association membership, to show their commitment to their children and their sense of maturity and responsibility to their CVs, which again appeals to employers and increases their prospects. So you can see from this, the employment situation is quite prejudiced and quite a hostile area if you're a non-father. And the impact of that is not just financial. So I just want to go to the Q&A if there's any questions. There's none. I mean, if you do have any questions or you want to experience, if you had experience with anything I've talked, please share that, because it'd be really good for other people to see that. Because I was quite surprised by this, actually, when I saw these studies. They're quite shocking. Anyway, the impact. It's not just financial. What happens is that you have reduced promotional opportunities, and that has an adverse effect on your wealth. It has an adverse effect on your prosperity. So it does impact you, this situation. But what that does is that it then creates a lack of ambition for you, because I've experienced this, that I feel like I'm not getting anywhere in a corporate situation. Senior roles are not coming my way. I'm being bypassed. And from that, this can lead to feelings that are damaging. And we've known what these are as non-fathers: depression, jealousy, anger, and isolation. So you can see the situation when you're in an adverse environment where you're already suffering from not actually being a father, and the feelings that creates, that when you're in a situation at work where you're being impacted morally and psychologically and financially, this can have a really damaging effect to you. And it's been seen to actually increase in risk-averse behaviors in non-fathers, which is very serious, very serious. Now, there's two bits of evidence which I found. There was a newspaper report where they found that childless men are impacted by cultural, societal, and family pressures for depression. Part of that would come from your employment in the cultural side. So you can see you already have pressures from your society and family without your employment adding to that. And what they found is that 50% of the men experienced isolation, because sometimes you would just close yourself off from what's happening. That's what we do, we retreat. 33% became depressed. And then 25% experienced jealousy, because at the end of the day, you feel like somebody has something that you want. You want that job, you want that wealth, you want that recognition, you want that respect. So these reports show the impact that this can have on you as a non-father. More worrying is that Sweden did a study with men without father, and they without children, and they found that they are at greater risk of harm from more adverse behavior, which is driven from being depressed and from the factors we talked about. And these can lead to addiction, in worst cases suicide, injury, that could be harming, the threat of external violence. And the reason that has become the case is because people sometimes give up and they're not aware of what they're doing, and they put themselves at risk. They don't care. And then also there has been health impacts as well. So this particular study from Sweden, you can see it online if you want to, is quite insightful as to how damaging it can be as a non-father, and why it's important that we have to be aware of this and we have to try and do something about it. I'm just going to go to the chat. Yep, I quite agree with what Stephanie said about the official statistics. Yeah, they do. We can feel that, but sometimes we're told that we're just imagining it. But these studies show that there is evidence that what we're experiencing is discrimination. Yeah, absolutely. Paying employees. Yeah, they do struggle with mental health because there's evidence that shows from the newspaper report as to what the impact that would be, and from the Sweden as well, the impact of that. So a bit of a grim picture, but it's well worth just pointing out that this is evident and it could be happening where you are now. So this is building awareness to actually explore and see, is this happening in my situation at work? Can I ask my employer to define their policies? Am I treated right? So what can be done? How do we fight a situation which is built on popular beliefs, which are total garbage and unproven, a sense of social injustice at work, that we are assumed that we are freer, we are not as responsible, we're not as hardworking, we're not as committed, we're not as reliable. Adverse work policies. A lot of the policies you'll find at work are tailored for families. Flexible working is one of them, where people are able to pick up their kids and take time off because of it. Again, that's a bit of it's a hot cookie, because these people are voluntarily had kids, where a lot of the time we involuntarily didn't have kids. So why is it the case that flexible working is not something that can be it can be actually given to non-fathers as well? I'm sure it does, but is that something in your workplace that you see more, that people with kids actually have more time away from work and have better hours than you? Who's picking up the slack? Just like in Facebook, that's another area to look at. Also, there's prejudice and discrimination, which you pointed out how the employers use those beliefs to actually monitor and recruit people, looking at filtering CVs, scoring higher. So this is something that is very difficult, as you can see, to fight against in the employment area. So what's the first thing? Now, this might sound really simple and it might sound a bit harsh, but I really mean it. The first stage to healing is to stop apologizing. When I used to tell people I was childless, I used to say it in a very meek, kind of guilty way at times. I used to say, I'm not a dad, in that way. And I felt really ashamed of that. But it's true that I've realized that there's no need to apologize. There's no need to apologize for not being a father, because there's been no failure. No one has failed. You haven't failed. Your partner hasn't failed. No one has failed in this situation. Scientific proof shows that if it's infertility, guys can be totally healthy, lead great lives, don't have any medication, don't even drink, and find themselves infertile. So it's something that you cannot take as failure. It's also no one's fault. It's not your fault. It's not your partner's fault either. It's nobody's fault. I used to think it was my fault. I used to think that I did something wrong here. That's why the situation was created. But it is nobody's fault. And from that, there's nothing to be ashamed of. I used to feel shame. I felt the legacy in my father's family of being the fifth generation man without any descendants of male or female. But there's no shame there. I shouldn't feel ashamed, and I don't feel ashamed because I see it as an occurrence, and that's what it is. It's just something in your life that hasn't happened. It's awful. It's something that you wanted, but that's what it is that it's something that hasn't occurred, but there's been no fault, no failure, and no shame. So therefore, there's no need to apologize. So that's really, really key here about not apologizing. Next is taking ownership. Your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your behavior, they all belong to you. What you think makes a man is your thoughts, not society, not what is expected of you. Because that's how I felt when I was trying to be a father, is that I was using external influences to shape my thoughts, which shape my emotions and feelings and behavior. When my own thoughts belong to me, my emotions belong to me, my feelings belong to me, therefore how I behave is belonging to me as well. So the first thing I did when I stopped apologizing is that I took ownership of that. They are yours. You think, you feel, you behave as best serves you, not what people expect of you and not what society expects of you. Fatherhood is not a completion. So from ownership, you can then become responsible, because you're now responsible for your life. You own your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior, and your emotions. So therefore, you can take control now. You take control as to what you want from life. You take control as to what best suits you. You take control as to what direction you want to go in. And that means that you have to accept what's happened. That was something that I didn't want to do. I just couldn't face it. I kept hanging on to think that at some point this is going to happen. I'm going to be a dad. But it didn't happen. But I accept that now because it's just a part of my life, but it's not going to control my life. I control my life, just as you control your life. That means that you can become accountable for what you do. That will stop these risk-averse behaviors because you're in control, you're accepting, and you're becoming accountable as to what you do in life, and you account for yourself. And that's really important too, because responsibility for that accountability just means there's an intention, but accountability means that there's a real desire that you want to, fulfill and have the life and have the recognition and the rewards that you deserve. And that's what we're talking about here from your employment. So it's being responsible. So again, you're determining what's best for you. Now from this, you're now going to define who you are. Because your values, your beliefs, your strengths, your weaknesses are you. They are your authentic self. And those values and beliefs are powerful and they matter. This is what you contribute to this world. It's important. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a contribution to this world. And fatherhood, in my case, destroyed that, because though I was going against my own values and beliefs, going against what I was good at, hiding what my weaknesses were, and not being my true self. So it's really important to get in touch as to what your values are, what your beliefs are, what you're good at, what your weaknesses are, you can embrace. And because you are now in ownership and responsibility, you can now share those. You can accept those. We all have weaknesses. And that's being your authentic self. So what does this mean? Well, it means that you can engage now. You can engage with your employer. You can engage with other people. You can be visible because you are now owning who you are. You're being responsible and you know who you are. You're being your authentic self and you're showing up as you. And that's a powerful person showing up. That's a unique person as well. You can stay in your power. That means that you are now showing your power to people. And from that, you can share openly. You can convey what you want people to know about you without having to justify it. That's something that I've now learned to do. And I engage people, not just non-fathers, but fathers and mothers. When they ask about my status, I say, yes, I'm childless. But I don't say it with hesitation. I don't say it with shame. I say it how it is. You can engage. You can show up at your workplace. You belong there. You can show up in your family and your friends. You belong there. Just because you're not a father doesn't mean that you're not an important and powerful person. That's because you have taken ownership, you're responsible, and you know who you are. So from this, you can engage as you. This is a powerful position to engage not just your employers, but other people in your life, other families, your own family maybe, where you might have actually shied away from going to certain events. You're now in a powerful position because you can engage. And that's why it's important for these 4 steps. That's going to give you the tools to be able to fight this. Not with aggression, but with will, and fighting it because you deserve it. You deserve it. You are worthy and you are important. So before I go to the conclusions, I'm going to go to the chats. Less choice of annual leave. Yep, quite agree with Nicholas there about less choice of annual leave. I mean, one of the things that happens is that some employers close for school holidays. Again, that's mandatory, and it's not always a policy that suits people that don't have kids. So again, that can be seen as a discrimination, but that's how things are tailored. So yeah, absolutely. Well, as I said about challenging this is that you can actually speak, you can engage with your employer in a consensual way, that's a contextual way rather, as to what you are looking for, what you want to, what you stand for. Yeah, I quite agree. Why he needs time off at Christmas? Well, we all need time off at Christmas. We all work. We all want to have, some time to ourselves just because we don't have kids. So no questions at the moment? Right, give me an easy time. So let's look at summarizing and concluding. So the fatherhood bonus, as I've explained, is that it's unwarranted, it's unproven, it's garbage. I mean, I'll go and say it's total bollocks, because it doesn't rest upon factors that can actually be evaluated and calculated. It's just a perception. It's a perception that fathers have a different values, have different attributes to non-fathers, but they are no more hardworking, they are no more effective or efficient, and they are no more capable as non-fathers. As I said, it means that it prejudices non-fathers, and it means that ultimately it can lead to lower pay, lower prospects, lower wealth, lower ambition, lower desires. And from that, it can degrade you, because you can feel like you're never going to reach where you want to go. You're not going to be that you're never going to be that top person. You feel like a second-class citizen. And also, one of the things that we pointed out is that it's damaging. It's damaging in terms of what it can create to an already difficult time as a father, a non-father rather, where you're coming to terms emotionally about not having kids. So the fatherhood bonus is something that should be taken seriously and should be questioned at your employment. So how do we fight it? As I said, the first thing and the most important thing is to please stop apologizing if you are, that you're not a father. You have nothing to apologize for. There's been no fault. There's been no failure. There's no shame. You're just as worthy and whole and important a man, strength, capability, spirit, everything as a father. So you need to realize that that means that you matter. Taking ownership means that you own your thoughts, you own your emotions, you own your feelings. They are yours, not what people expect from you, not family, not society, not culture, not employment. They belong to you. And you, from that, take responsibility for those, because you can then control them. They're part of your life, and you can then accept things in your life. And the thing about accepting things in your life means that you not only accept the bad things that happen in your life, you then allow good things to come into your life. The life that you want to lead, the life that you want without kids, the rich life that you deserve, and the rich life you really want, because you're accepting the fact that just because you're not a father doesn't mean to say that you're not deserving and you can't have those things. And you can define you, because who you are, your values, your strengths, your weaknesses, your beliefs, they are unique, and they are the things that you can share and people can benefit from. Fathers can benefit from that as well, not just non-fathers. That's how we're able to help each other and raise awareness, is that we can understand that we are just as capable and we are just as whole as non-fathers, as fathers rather. And from that, we can engage on a equal, confident, but on a, what's the word for it? A compatible platform. So we can then talk about what we stand for, what we want, what we deserve, what we're looking for as far as recognition, but also the fact that we appreciate fathers as well. We're not against them. And we can live together without having any feelings of disharmony or suspicion. But at the same time, we can just be as important as each other. That's why the engagement side is really important. It's really important to be able to be open with people about being childless. If it comes into a conversation without shame and without hesitancy, because it's nothing to be ashamed of. And the more that people understand that, well, the more that you do that, the more that you find that you are going to be able to be in wherever you want to be and show up as you. So thank you for your time. I hope that this webinar has been useful as far as looking at the fatherhood bonus and looking at the drivers that actually create it, and also what impact it has on you and what you can do to actually fight against that and better yourself for life. So what I'll do, I see I've got some Q&As here. How do we initiate a wider discussion from Nicholas on the constitution of family and challenge the systematic discrimination? Well, there's a few ways you can do this. We have the Clan of Brothers, which is the Facebook group, which we can use to post into Facebook, into social media. So we can put forward, if we've got examples of this, we could take the reports and evidence and ask about this from HR, where you are now. Or you can, if you wanted to, it's a really good way of post some online, like a video or like a comment in LinkedIn, or do a poll in LinkedIn as well about whether people are aware of this and what they think. So there's ways of actually creating this, and we'd be happy, I'm sure, in the Clan of Brothers to assist anything. So please get in touch, and I'll certainly be happy to too. Does anyone have any more questions? I'll go to the chat. Okay, let's have a quick look. So big. It's often given to, but totally agree with that. Sorry, move that too quickly. From Mary Fritz. Yeah, it is actually linked more towards, it's funny, isn't it, pet leave, more than, as are not critical for anyone as they frequently lack friendship. Pet leave is often, yeah, absolutely, it is geared towards kids. But I mean, you could say it's a bit like people that smoke. They take more time off from a habit that they voluntarily want to do. But as somebody who's a non-smoker, you still continue working, but people see it as something that they assume you don't mind doing. But at the end of the day, it does impact on you. So yeah, flexible working is something that is very evident. I found that in corporate, where I had a colleague who used to really start to stretch the boundaries of coming into work late because you had to take her kids to school, and she used to say she used to always be in a traffic jam, and it got later and later and she left earlier and earlier. But again, she didn't make up the hours and work had to be done. So yeah, that is something really that how it's going to be tackled. I just think it needs more awareness, so people in HR are, if more people bring it up, they can't just ignore it. Yeah, I quite agree with Catherine on that about HR policies. It's something that, I mean, without going into in the motherhood, it impacts mothers and fathers. This does. Sorry, it impacts non mothers and fathers, and a lot of the policies are related to family, and they're not inclusive. You can find that in workplaces, but yeah, I totally agree with that. How do we deal with the term dad joke in the workplace, which is rather triggering? Well, the question is that if you do come across that, you could, if you're in your own power and you are accepting, you've got no shame of being a dad, you have the right to say to somebody, what do you mean? Can you explain that? Because I now talk to more people, and from that, people are less likely to actually say anything snidey, because I'm open about it, and I will actually speak openly in a public place so people can hear. So if somebody is doing that on the dad joke, I'd smoke them out. I mean, if you understand that there's no fault, there's no shame, there's no failure, you are whole, you're just as important as that person, you're just as strong, that joke is irrelevant. And you can ask the person, what do you mean by that? Because, okay, he might be a dad, but it sounds like there are other insecurities there, and he's using that as a way of just shielding that. So again, if you, with these sort of things in the Clan of Brothers, in the Facebook group we've got, if you post these, I'm sure there'll be a lot of support from myself and the other people in admin, you know, to support this. And listen, we've just got it. We're here. We matter, and we're important. And you have a right to be wherever you are, and wherever you turn up, as far as in your family, work, sports, at the bus stop. You're whole. It doesn't matter if you're not a dad. You're whole, and you're just as important and just as powerful as the other person. I hope that helps. Any more questions? I think we're done here. Very bad. Oh, so maybe I got that wrong. A dad joke, I understand, is very dry. Bad joke, usually a pun, different across the pond. Agree, it's hard to speak up, respect. Okay, well, I understand that now. I mean, with myself, in the past, I used to play a lot of soccer, and I used to have there's a lot of banter in the dressing rooms about people that were not dads. We call them Jaffas in this country, which are seedless oranges. And people used to say that and say things like it's all juice and no pips. And I used to be very quiet, and I used to then become quite introvert, because I thought, I don't want to be a target of that, but I don't want to actually be part of it either. I see it differently now, because if somebody says that, I can say to them, okay, I'm not a dad, and just leave it at that. I don't have to justify why I'm not a dad. That's how I see that, if that's useful. But again, if you want to bring that more into the Clan of Brothers, we can look into that, and we can sort of provide some support. I'm sure the other guys as well. Okay, I think doesn't seem to be any more from the questions and answers in chat. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening. I hope that the webinar is useful, and I'm going to pass it on to Stephanie.
Thank you. No, that was really interesting. But what I love is the fact that some of the thoughts we have about work for men and females, when we feel overlooked or automatically assumed to fill in for a parent, they're actually doing research, and the statistics are coming out to sort of prove that what we're saying is not bullshit, basically, which is a lot of time is said.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. So if you can share the links with me, I'd like to share those links for people
Absolutely,
to do their own research and look it up, because as you're saying, the one thing about approaching employers, it's hard, but when you've actually got certified statistics and links that are not just it's not what based on what you say or what you feel, then they've got something to go, here you are, here are the actual statistics, here are the facts, here is the data. here is the information to prove to you that this is often how childless employees feel in a work environment. It gives me hope. I think it's a real positive that you've actually shared all that. Really good.
You know, it was horrible finding that, because I had my suspicions. To actually find it makes it even more. The first emotion was anger, actually, but then
I understand that. Yeah,
you know, but yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
But yeah, no, like you say, I think because that's what we need to approach employees, and there are actually a lot more people doing it, but it's easy when they've got examples. So they don't just see as somebody going in as a pity party. But yeah, thank you. It was a really interesting conversation.
No worries. Yeah. And I think that one of the things about approaching the employee, what I was saying, is that it's about going to them with the right mindset. So if you go to them with a mindset of being kind of inquisitive, not being like you deserve an answer or you want an answer, they can brush you off, which that's what they're doing, because they probably aren't aware of these statistics. Yeah,
that's it. Often a lot of the time it's just like, no, don't worry about it. And I think the other big thing that you brought up tonight is like, when we get asked questions, we often feel awkward. So we don't feel comfortable just to go, no. But no is a complete sentence. We don't have to justify anymore. And if they ask a question, we're just as entitled to go, I'm not actually comfortable with that question, so I'm not going to answer it, and change the subject. Or it gives you the opening to explain a little bit more. But yeah, it is finding that confidence. And at first when you're doing it, quite often you're like, I've just said that to him, I can't believe it. And it's like, I don't need to say no and add a joke on the end, like, oh no, I've got 2 cats and a hubby, he's a big enough kid for me, which is what I used to do. No, and letting them fill in the pause.
It's your business, it's not theirs.
So brilliant. Now, so yeah, I suppose we'll have to come to a conclusion with that.
I know, the hour went quickly, didn't it?
I know it does. It really does go by. But like I say, it's been really interesting. And I appreciate you coming on and doing that, especially for Men Matter too.
No, it's been great. Thank you for the opportunity.
And hopefully we'll do it again.
Absolutely.
Sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everybody. And we shall see you next time.